to just dig a little bit into the creative process as well. So, I mean, you shared something of your story, which is amazing, but then you have to try and articulate that, you know, but also not even just around this issue, as you've said, you know, your work, so much of your work is around you trying to give voice to experiences that you've had or others have had. So I wanted to chat a little bit about that and how you go about that, but also wanted to ask you a little bit about the film as well that kind of accompanies the poem. But before we talk about that, I mean, does all your art have a message to it?
I think all art does have message. I think that's something I talk about quite a lot with artists. Is like, you're saying something, you know, you're always saying something, and you get to choose what that's going to be and where you emphasize. Yeah, I love hip hop, but I'm not really interested anymore in listening to someone tell me for 3 minutes about how good they are. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, just, you know, use it. Go. You don't have to like be an activist on every song. Just go somewhere with it. And I don't believe art is a means to an end. I believe art is an end unto itself. Like, I don't think art is just there to take you somewhere else. I think art sometimes, you know, you look at a painting and you can stare at a painting for hours and the painting untangles you. You know, the painting doesn't lead you to another building. It's just the painting does something. And so I think the same with songs and poems. But I think every piece of art has a message. And sometimes it's a message that the artist didn't set out to communicate. But as artists, let's be intentional about the fact that it will say something, you know.
And I mean, you kind of hint at the potential of being misunderstood or misinterpreted in what you originally were hoping. I mean, does that make it scarier? I mean, do you feel more vulnerable? I mean, particularly with something like this poem where it's incredible, you're being really vulnerable. You sat down and wrote something about your deepest regrets and something that people, you know, don't go shouting from the rooftops. So you were feeling vulnerable anyway, probably in creating a piece like this. And then there's always the vulnerability of maybe being misunderstood or misinterpreted. How do you deal with vulnerability when you're creating?
Yeah, I think there's an element where it's kind of like standing on the diving board and you're like, I'm going to jump, you know, and if I stay here for that much longer, it's not going to make the jump any different. I think some people are different to me, but there's points where I just know I've got to talk about something. And I knew I had to write this poem. And I honestly didn't know what the reaction was going to be. But I did know that there would be at least one or two people that would say, maybe not say, but would feel, oh, you just given space for my experience too. And that's enough, you know, like there's something of you, Ian, that I can see. And when I look at you, I see something of me, you know, and I know that sounds really abstract, but there's this truth to like just seeing each other and hearing from each other where you're like, oh my goodness, that's what I think. And I didn't even realize that until I heard you say it. And so that's enough reason for me to jump off the diving board, so to speak. But the fear of being misunderstood is a real one. Like, is a real one. And especially, I put the poem up on my IGTV, if you remember, back in the first lockdown.
Yeah,
I mean, we had like 10,000 views on it in like a week. Like, it really went round and got shared. And I went through it all over again then. The difference was, and maybe this is the difference between 2018, 2020, what I was really I remember being nervous about was, are people just going to hear a guy saying that he doesn't agree with something? Because that was never my intention. But in 2020, we're fragile, man. And the poem isn't about me saying, you shouldn't watch porn, and I disagree that you're watching porn, and porn is bad, 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 bad. I might have those opinions, but that's not what the poem is communicating. The poem is communicating a story, and I really just wanted people to hear a story, not an opinion piece, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Obviously, the opinion comes through, but that's the tension I walk with. Hey, here's a story. Find yourself in these words. If that helps, amazing. If it doesn't, it's all good. And then there comes a point, and we can talk about it, where people do misunderstand it, and you have to then walk with humility and help them understand your intention, and also accept the fact that you might have got some things wrong, and like
sure,
might not
absolutely.
have thought it through enough. So
yeah.
yeah,
And I think with story, just the nature of story as well, isn't it? It's different to writing an essay where you've got to kind of cover everything, and you've got a kind of conclusion and introduction, and a story. By the nature of story, it becomes about often one point of view, and there may be an acknowledgement that there are other points of view as well that exist around that, but it's a story, and so it's going to have a perspective of a person by the nature of it being a story. And I think that's difficult with this issue because there are so many perspectives and stories. So you were telling your story, but also you were telling the story of an individual who is a consumer and has been a consumer of porn, and what that felt like and how toxic that felt, and everything else. I think one of the things that loads of people related to that and connected to that, and they were really helped by, as you say, just someone putting words to perhaps their emotion. But I think equally there were some people who understandably felt a little bit like, this isn't the whole piece. This isn't the whole story. What about those who are exploited within the industry, or even using the I guess the vehicle that you used in terms of using relationship with porn, like a relationship with a person. Some people found that really helpful, and others found that really unhelpful, because it was like, okay, so you're humanizing pornography, and therefore there's the potential that people might feel that you're saying it's somehow, the women in the videos that you're watching, it's their fault. They tempted you and entranced you, and which I know isn't your view, but that's the potential of the misunderstanding, I guess, you tell a story. I mean, do you want to speak into that? Because I know, obviously, at the time, again, people viewed, expressed their concerns that it was maybe reinforcing a negative view of women, and kind of portraying men as the victims of kind of women who are kind of, seductress. And that's not it. I mean, we know the porn industry is run by men, mostly.
For sure.
Created off mostly for men, although not exclusively, and certainly exploits women along the way. That's the reality of it. So we're not saying that it's, women who are kind of, the Jezebels, and who are kind of trying to make life terrible for men, poor old men. That's not the message of this. So do you want to speak into that, or? I mean, the poem is trying to kind of personify my relationship with porn, and when we put it into film, we kind of chose this relationship to kind of show the fragility, the tender moments I'm trying to talk about in the poem. But obviously, I'm a heterosexual man, so when I'm speaking, and so there's a woman in the video, and so some people were like, okay, so she's the personification of porn. To which, I'd say, no, she's not. The relationship is the personification of one's relationship with porn. But I see how it could be misinterpreted. And I'll tell you the thing that I learned from it most, Ian, was I wish I had showed the video to some more women before I did the final edit. And if I had done that, and I've actually done that now in a few different situations, not just like pertaining to women, but people, of different races, different, careers, like literally just like, hey, how do you feel about this? Because you could see it differently. So it's really helped me in that way. But no, you're right. Like porn is genderless. Porn isn't, you can't ascribe it to a man or to a woman. And you are right. The industry is predominantly ran by men, but but what I was trying to communicate was the relational aspect. And so often, like, we talk about porn very kind of distant to ourselves when it's a very intimate thing. And so I've had conversations with people
just to go back really quick, when I first started writing it, I started writing the poem really separate to myself. And I was kind of writing about porn and about things that people experience. And then I sat with some friends and I said to them, what's your relationship with porn? And they all replied very differently. You know, one talked about he watches it daily. One told me how him and his girlfriend watch it, and all these different angles, different to mine as someone who was, you know, trying to avoid it. And I suddenly realized, you know, this is a relationship, and it's a personal, unique relationship that everyone has. So I'm going to talk about my personal, unique relationship. Now, the interesting thing is there's always the universal wrapped up in the personal, as there is the other way around. So when I say something that's personal to me, it does have a universal impact. It's like, you know, it's funny if you make the most personal statement that's so personal to you, there is, going back to what I was saying earlier, there's something that everyone else can relate to. So it's complex, but I think it's worthy. It's a worthy thing to do. It's worthy to walk through those complex terrains to get to where I think we got to. And I have had countless messages. I mean, I'll share them with you, you know, anonymously, of course, but countless messages from people. And the predominant thing that I hear is, you helped give voice to my experience. And you've been able, now I'm able to see it a little clearer. I've had a few comments that are like, you know, porn's fine. I love porn. Why are you saying we shouldn't watch porn? To which I can reply, that's actually not what I'm saying. This isn't I'm not bringing down a rule. I'm just sharing a story, and we can all learn from each other's stories. That's a very long-winded answer.
No, but it's really important. And I think the nature of art is that, you know, that people are going to see it in different ways to how you created it, if you like. And that's some of the joy of art as well. I think, you know, what people draw out of a piece of art may not have been what the artist first thought. And that can be a positive thing. But sometimes that can go the other way as well.
Right.
But equally with story. So you kind of add story and art together, and, you know, there's going to be...
nuance.
And metaphor and other kind of methods of trying to communicate. I mean, I'm sure if somebody heard you, because I know, you know, you preach and things like that, someone heard you preach, the way you would communicate your view on pornography would be very clear in comparison to some of the nuance that might get lost. Yeah, and that's the form, isn't it? I guess that we've chosen for this.
Yeah, and I quite like creating art that then opens up the conversation, you know, so you move from that form to another. You know, I wrote a piece when I was at university. I did philosophy, and I wrote this piece called "Why I Believe Porn Achieves Nothing Good for Society," you know, and it was an opinion piece, and it was researched, and it was articulated in a debate like that. I wrote it in a debate around sexual ethics. And that's just a different form to a poem where you're sharing your story, and both lead to each other in different ways.
Mate, I want us to kind of wrap up soon, but I did want to ask a few questions around faith, if that was okay.
Of course, yeah.
So, not everybody watching this would necessarily, you know, identify themselves as being a person of faith, but many will, and you are. You know, you're a Christian, and so again, it's part of your story. Is how God has impacted you in this journey towards freedom. But before I talk about, I'll ask you about how your faith may have helped. How do you think porn impacted your faith? I mean, when you were looking at porn, were you a Christian at that point? Was it something that was affecting your relationship with God? You know, this relationship with pornography?
Yeah, I think that the most defining kind of impact that porn had on me in that respect is this feeling of shame. And guilt is the feeling I've done something wrong. Shame is the feeling I am something wrong, you know, and to make that clarification, because that's what I felt. I am something wrong. And then when you're then talking about a relationship with God, you know, God, this idea of ultimate being who sustains life, suddenly if there's something I'm not able to tell someone, you know, my age and in my form, how can I approach God, you know? And so I would say my relationship with porn created some real problems for me. But those problems, the complexity actually led to incredible freedom and simplicity. Because, you know, ultimately, I believe in a God who doesn't shame us and a God who brings us freedom and actually brings us out of shame. And all shame is hiding. You know, the Genesis story tells us that man and women hid from God. And so my faith is kind of built on this idea that we hide from God and God calls us out of our hiding. And so porn was the recognition of my hiding, but my relationship with God was the recognition that he's calling me from it. And, you know, it wasn't easy. I know it's easy just to say that shame is real and you believe it as a fundamental truth. So it's difficult to articulate anything else or believe anything else. But it was an incredible experience, it being eroded, and the simplicity of being loved and being known and belonging despite my actions is probably the most defining thing about my faith, you know.
How have you found kind of your faith and spiritual kind of practices or things that you do day to day? How have they helped you stay porn free, I guess?
Yeah, really good question. Prayer is something that I've struggled with my whole life, not actually praying, but understanding what prayer is and coming to the realization that it is the most natural expression of who I am has been very helpful rather than something I've got to work out how to do. Prayer is conversation with God, and you can't have a conversation with someone you're avoiding. So when I pray, which honestly, Ian, looks as simple as what we're doing now, right? It's as simple as this. I was out on a run this morning and I was praying, and I was sat at my desk today working and I was praying. I was having a pasta heated up for lunch and I was praying. You know, there was no dear Lords and amens. There's a constant conversation. And when I'm having that conversation, what it tells me is I'm with God. I'm with God. I'm with one who knows me, loves me beyond anything I can or can't do. That gives me the strength to realize, the hope to realize that I'm not defined by what I do. And I have a guidance and a presence that can actually lead me towards the things that I want to do more than just the things I don't want to do. So when I say prayer has helped me, what I'm saying is companionship has helped me and relationship has helped me. And prayer is the evidence of that relationship. So the Bible says, I can do all things through Christ that strengthens me. Well, what does that mean? That means someone is with me who helps me get through something that I would struggle to get through on my own. And often I associate the voice of God as the voice that is leading me towards embracing the reality instead of escaping in the fantasy, right? Let me be real practical. I'll be sat at my desk with the computer and I'll start thinking about the websites I could go on, right? And I will hear a voice that says, go for a run. I'll hear a voice that says, go and give your wife a hug, you know? And it's a prompt to choose the reality.
Yeah. That's good, man. Thank you so much. It's been really, really good. Thanks for spending so much time digging so deep as well. And
pleasure.
Really appreciate that. And
no problem.
And people need to just check out the poem, obviously. And as I say, that's on the YouTube channel. It's on howgoodisporn.com as well. That's another way that you can kind of not only see the film, but also there's lyrics on there, but also places you can go to get help if you're looking for help in this issue. That's all on that one website. So that's a good place to look at for yourself and maybe share around as well. Thanks, Josh.
For sure. Pleasure, mate. Cheers.